like inherently want to be seen as like good people, and I think that this like um I think you sort of see this like with TERFs and that sort of thing, is that they want to be seen as good people, but they do have this sort of anxiety around like women's issues and specifically uh, trans women being in their spaces and that um, and the thing is that like I think that there's probably some benefit to sort of meeting them where they are and like sort of uh, trying to like educate and talk these people through things rather than just sort of dunking on them. But again, with this sort of going back to like the way social media is set up, like social media is set up that dunking on TERFs or whatever is actually you know it's more profitable than trying to sort of educate people on these particular issues. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's set up an incentive where people just ridicule people rather than trying to make any progress on actually changing the thing that's
Yeah,
needed,
and
basically.
and the thing is like trying to explain the like Twitter especially like trying to like explain like gender expression and gender like you know um just gender in general. Like Twitter is like an awful platform for that. Like 280 characters to like try and you know uh, get those sort of ideas across um, is it's impossible. So you may have like a thread of tweets talking about it, but someone may come along and sort of dunk in there, and then your tweet gets pushed down, so no one sees it, and like yeah. Anyway, it's you know um,
It's pointless to do it on there anyway because the business motive isn't there to make people see things and think about them and challenge them. It's to push content you either already agree with or disagree with and will violently argue with and stuff. And I think it's a really bad medium as well to communicate stuff with people because, well, for a start, it's all public as well. So people don't tend to change their mind if it's something where everyone can see them
mm,
doing it. You tend to grab down the point that you've already got if you're doing it in public. Like if you have a discussion with a friend, normally you've got that buy-in there, so you're not going to sort of go ballistic at them if there's something sort of you disagree with and stuff. You may actually change your mind there, but I don't think it's going to happen on Twitter where anyone can look and you get that feeling of like, oh well, if I change my mind, everyone will see it. It'll be embarrassing rather than educate people towards it and stuff.
yeah, but it's also the like to a degree, it's the only game in town. Like
Mm.
um, like you could do it on Facebook, I suppose. That's probably a better place to do it, really.
Seem to educate the people in their lives really, rather than aim to change real like proper strangers and stuff. And
Mm.
it's all you can do, really, isn't it? And stuff. If you know it's not going to work on these platforms, you've got to just do it with the people in your local community, and stuff, rather than
Yeah,
engage in stuff like that.
yeah, and just like when you see people engaging in this behavior and talking in this way, like pushing back on it and that, it's really the only thing that you can do. Like though there is a point to be made, is that you may not change the mind of the person that you're interacting with, but you may change the mind of someone in their audience. So like you're
Yeah.
saying that it's like public and that sort of thing, but like if there's someone who's reading that thread or whatever on Twitter, who may not be publicly involved in the conversation, you may change their mind.
Mm.
Mm. But
Even with changing people's minds, in a way, it's not like if the goal is to enhance people's rights and stuff, then you could theoretically do that without if you organise and get politicians who are on your side as well and stuff, then you could actually, like for example, you brought up the civil rights movement. That was unpopular when Lyndon Johnson passed the right to give extended franchise to people, but it was something he believed in, and the Democratic Party did, and but this is the classic critique of identity politics, isn't it? So they have popular policies that were popular on an economic front, and people didn't vote on identity grounds because there's so much difference between the economic stuff between Republicans and Democrats, that they would essentially sneak in the progressive social stuff that was less popular because people didn't vote on that issue and stuff. So, or for example, you brought up decriminalisation of homosexuality. In this country, that was done by Labour in the late 60s, even though that was unpopular with their voters. But people voted for them because they didn't care what their social issues were. They were voting on economic grounds because they believed in social democracy over the sort of capitalism and the Tories and stuff. So I think that irregardless of changing people's minds, you can affect the more important change of like governmental issues and stuff, like to make sure they're not discriminated against on a systematic level without even changing people's minds. Obviously, changing people's minds may affect individual actions that people do and bigotry like that, but to change the bigger stuff, which I would argue is more important, because when things become war, they become naturalised, and then again, you said the feeling that people have of things being new, that neuters over time when stuff becomes naturalized and stuff. So yeah, that's what I would say would also be.
Yeah, I think you can like do both.
Yeah, but both is good. Yeah,
you can do both, but the time that you spend on Twitter, for example, that's time that you can do both, but by doing one, you are doing the exclusion of the others.
But I think the big difference though is that like it's not illegal to be transgender. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like that's the big difference.
Like so at the moment the question is about like normalizing these sort of things and actually getting people on board for it, so that because these like despite the fact that it's not illegal to be transgender, they are being like disproportionately murdered and stuff like that, and all of this is to do with like social stuff. It's not really necessarily legal, though there is like a lot of states and countries and whatnot where being transgender or being gay is legal, but they still have things like trans panic and gay panic laws, which basically say that someone is justified in murdering someone if they're trans or gay and they come onto someone of the they come onto like for example a cis man or something, that man is apparently justified in murdering someone because they're not the gender that they thought they were or whatever, like, which is insane. And again, I get what you're saying, like, push for those laws to be changed, and I think like a lot of people are doing that, but I think as well, like, you do need to socially change people's minds in regards to like how we view certain minorities, and whether because like there are people who don't see these people as being human. That's what it essentially boils down to. They don't see them as people, so they feel justified in being able to take their life.
Yeah.
I know, it just got really dark there, guys. Sorry.
I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And this is why it's important to change, like, to interact with people and change their minds on these topics, is like, outside of the law, these social ideas have actual impacts on people's like realities and that, and like how people like you like even like less extreme like versions of it is things like, you know, getting a job, for example. Like, so if someone has bigoted views about like you know, like for example, like so if you're going for if you're a trans person, and you go for a job somewhere, and the person interviewing you is a TERF, like,
Yeah.
do you think that you're going to get that job? Because in the back of their mind, that person's going, I don't want this person sharing a toilet with me in my workplace. And there's you know, and you can say that there's laws in place to actually prevent that person being discriminated against, but like there's no real oversight in regards to like why people are hired. Like, it's easy enough for someone to say, well, you know, they weren't um I you know they weren't qualified enough, or they weren't like the right cultural fit for our office, you know, or that sort of thing. So like, yeah, there's a ton of stuff that is outside of like the laws and that sort of thing that can like impact people's like material realities. And I think that's why it's important to like try and actually enact social change.